today I am going to tell you about my traumatic, very fast and very traumatic birth story with Brooklyn. So let me start from the beginning. Brooklyn was born on September 28, 2016 at 6:23 a.m. and it was probably the craziest, most hectic day of my life. I had a doctor's appointment the previous 2 days before that, 2 days prior to that, and they decided that they were going to induce me because I was a week overdue, and for 2 weeks straight I was at 2 centimeters dilated and 90% effaced and nothing was changing. So she was pretty much kind of just staying in the same position. Her head was completely down. They said if her head got any lower it would be out, but that was for 2 straight weeks, and every time I went to the doctors I was expecting there to be some kind of change or some more dilation or something, or more effacement, and nothing was changing. So my doctor decided that I probably wasn't going to be going on my own, so that they're going to have to induce me. So I went to my doctor's appointment and they scheduled a time for me to be induced, and so I was supposed to go into the doctor's or into the hospital on September 27th at 7:00 p.m. at night to start my induction. Well, on September 27th, they called me around 5 p.m. and asked me if there was any way I could come in earlier because they had a change of schedule and that they were going to be able to start my induction earlier. So my husband and I quick and hurried up and got everything packed in the car and dropped the dog off at his parents' house and rushed to the hospital so we can get induced sooner, hoping that maybe we'd have the baby sooner. So the hospital is about a half hour away from our house, so we headed out there, and when we got there, we got in our room probably around like 6:15, and we got settled in there, and the nurse came in and told me about the procedure that they were going to do, how they were going to start my induction and all of that. My official induction wasn't supposed to start until the 28th in the morning, but they're going to try to get my cervix a little bit ready by using a medication called Cervidil, and that was supposed to be inserted into my cervix, and it's like a little string with some medicine on it. It was supposed to be inserted into my cervix to help my cervix soften and to help it just get more effaced, so that way when they started giving me another medicine called Pitocin to start my contractions, that my cervix would already be effaced and softened enough for things to actually move and try to happen. So they put this Cervidil in around probably about 9:00 p.m. on the 27th, which was a Tuesday, and I was told that I was not allowed to get up and move or anything like that for an hour. The medicine had to be in there for an hour without me moving and all of that. So I laid in the most uncomfortable hospital bed for an hour, and Nick and I watched something on TV. I think we were watching Full House actually, but we were watching Full House on television that was in there, and we were just talking, laughing, just very, very excited that pretty soon, tomorrow, the next day, or the following day, we weren't sure how long my induction was going to take, but soon we would be meeting our beautiful baby girl, which we waited so long for. So we were so excited. So around 10:15, the nurse came back in and she gave me permission to get up and walk around and move around, and she's like, if you need to use the bathroom, go ahead. I was hooked up to a heart monitor for the baby, and also like they had me hooked up for a contraction monitor to see how my contractions were, which I wasn't really having any contractions at the time, but like maybe some minor Braxton Hicks ones. If you hear anything, it's the baby in the background. She's in her mama room trying to take a nap, but excuse her. She's just trying to fight going to sleep right now. But so they had me hooked up to all of these machines, and she told me if I needed to use the bathroom, I could unhook myself. So I figured, all right, I might as well get up and use the bathroom. And walk around because the hospital bed was so uncomfortable, and I have a bad back, so it felt like I was laying on a metal bed because the type of bed I was in is a birthing bed, so the whole bottom comes out of it, so when you're giving birth they can take the bottom out so you can push. So it was the most uncomfortable bed I've ever laid in. So I was getting up and just trying to walk around and make my back feel a little bit better. So I probably walked around just in the room for about 45 minutes to an hour, and then I got to use the bathroom and all of that. And then the nurse came back in around 11:15 and told us that they had a birth in like the next room next to us, and so that's why she wasn't back for a little while to check on us. And she asked if there was anything I'd want to eat, because once 12 o'clock hit, I was no longer allowed to eat or drink anything, because in the morning they were planning on starting my Pitocin to start my contractions to help me get into labor more. So they didn't want me to eat or drink anything anytime after 12. So I was like, sure, I'll have something. I might as well eat a little bit of something just to pull me over, because I wouldn't be able to eat the whole following day because I would be in labor, and you're not allowed to eat when you're in labor. You're only allowed to have like ice chips and just clear liquids and stuff, just in case there's a possibility that you have to have a C-section. So just in case I had to have a C-section, I was not allowed to eat or drink anything. So she brought me a little bagel and some apple juice, and I ate that, and I probably got finished that around like 12:15. And I was laying in bed. Nick and I were still watching Full House. There was like a marathon on at Nick at Night or something like that. So it was around 12:15 a.m. and I was just laying in the hospital bed, and I was getting so uncomfortable. My back was killing me. And then I noticed that my back pain wasn't consistent. Like, I would move and shift, and I was trying to change positions and everything, but it wasn't consistent. And then I realized it was coming in waves. It wasn't all the time. It was about 5 to 10 minutes apart, and it just kept getting stronger and stronger. So my nurse came back in to check on me. It was probably around like 1:30 she came back in to check, because she was running around. She was so sweet, but she was running around like a crazy person because she just helped deliver a baby previously in the next room. So they were trying to get that mama and baby all up to their own room to get all settled and everything. So she came back to check on me, and when she came back in, I told her, I said, I think I'm having back labor. And she kind of laughed it off and was like, no, you're not having back labor. She's like, we're monitoring your contractions. You're not really having any strong contractions at this point. And but I said to her, I was like, I am in a lot of pain. And they kept trying to tell me to get some sleep, because the following morning was going to be extremely crazy and hectic with trying to get me on Pitocin and all of that. So I told her, I said, if you guys want me to be able to sleep, I need some kind of pain medicine, because my back is hurting excruciatingly bad. The pain just kept getting worse and worse. And since they didn't believe that I was in labor or anything, that it was going to take a whole lot more time. So I needed something to help me sleep, some kind of thing to take the edge off, just because I wasn't sure if it was just my bad back hurting or if I was really in labor. So she called the doctor, and when the doctor came in, he checked me again. I was only at like a 2.5 centimeters dilated at that point, and they said, okay, we'll get you some kind of medicine. We'll put something in the IV for you so you can sleep. It will help you take the edge off, and it will help you sleep a little bit. So I said, that's great, perfect. I am thrilled, because I was exhausted at that point and I really wanted to get some sleep, but it was really hard to get sleep because I was in so much pain. So they left the room, and about 5 minutes later, my back pain went from maybe a 3 on the scale of pain to way past 10. Like 10 being the highest, it was way past that. And then all of a sudden, I was switching positions, and I felt like this like pop in my uterus, and then a gush of water came out, and I said, holy crap, I think my water broke. And I told my husband this. So we were trying to call the nurse to tell her what had just happened. And when my water broke, well, when I thought my water broke, all of a sudden I felt this intense pressure, like her head was pushing on my cervix, and it hurt so badly. And I said to my nurse, we were trying to call the nurse, we couldn't even get to the nurse at that point. Apparently we were hitting the wrong call button. There's a button on the bed, and then there was a button on this thing hanging on the wall. We were supposed to press the button on the thing hanging on the wall, not the one on the bed. We were sitting there pushing the one on the bed for 5 minutes and wondering why no nurse was coming. So I'm telling Nick, I said, you need to get out in that hallway, get somebody in here, because I am in so much pain right now. I said, I cannot take this medicine in the IV. I need an epidural like as soon as possible. So he's running out of the room trying to get a nurse. Luckily the nurse's station was right out in the hallway, so he's grabbing a nurse, and the nurse is like, okay, we'll send your nurse in a little bit. And because they were just in my room 2 minutes before that and checked me, and I was only at like a 2.5 centimeters dilated, and they said my contractions weren't strong or anything, I wasn't really having many contractions on the screen that they were measuring, they weren't in a huge rush to get into my room. But when the nurse was available, she came into the room, and I was pretty much in so much pain at that point. Like, I was holding on to the bed, there was a rail on the bed, and I was holding on to it, squeezing it, just trying to breathe through this pain, because it was the worst pain I've probably ever felt in my entire life. Well, not probably, definitely the worst pain I've ever felt in my entire life. So I was holding onto the bed, just trying to breathe through it all, and my nurse is like, all right, well, I don't think your water broke. I just checked you. So they were going to do the swatch test on me to see if my water really did break. And like I said before, my nurse didn't think it actually did. So she went to do the swatch test with the little bit of fluid that I had, and she did it, and she's like, oh, okay, you're right. Sorry, I have a little puppy here. Hi, buddy. She's like, okay, you're right, your water really did break. And I said, I told you. I knew that because I was in a lot of pain, and it was a huge gush of water, and like I said, a ton of pressure instantaneously when the pop happened. So she's like, all right, well, let me check you now also, just to see where you're at. Since you are in so much pain, your water did break, and all of that, we'll see where you're at and how far along you are. So this was 5 minutes before she checked me the last time, or 5 minutes after she checked me the last time. So she checked me again, and she's like, holy crap, you're at a 7. So I went from 2.5 centimeters dilated to 7 centimeters dilated, all in about 5 minutes time. And meanwhile, we were still waiting for the doctor to bring us excuse my dog, he's got his bone. We were waiting for the doctor to bring us the medicine that they were gonna give me in my IV. And so the nurse quickly called and said, we don't need that medicine, we need the anesthesiologist here to give her her epidural because she's gonna go quick, she's already at a 7. And I think the doctor probably had a heart attack at that point as well, because they never expected me to go that quickly. I mean, I still technically wasn't induced yet. The induction wasn't supposed to start really officially until the following morning around 8 o'clock. This was around 2:30 in the morning at this point probably. And so they hurried up and tried to call the anesthesiologist to get me my epidural. Luckily, thank the Lord, he got there very quickly. So I was so happy because I was in so much pain. My contractions at that point, they're monitoring them on the screen, and at this point, they were going off the chart. Like, the intensity of them was so high that the screen couldn't even measure how high they were. So my nurse was really funny. She was like, oh my goodness, I never expected to have to deliver a baby tonight with you. She's like, you came in here a couple hours ago and you were only at a 2, and I checked you like 10 minutes ago and you were only at a 2, and now you're at a 7. So I was going really, really fast. Like, they were not prepared for this at all whatsoever. They were not prepared to have me give birth to a baby that night. So my doctors weren't even in the hospital at the time. So the whole reason they scheduled me for the induction that night to start to come in was because my doctors were all supposed to be there the following morning when I started my induction. So my doctors weren't even there. They weren't even in the hospital. They weren't on call at that point. So it was crazy. But we, like I said, at that point, the contractions were going through the roof. They were so intense. It was the worst pain I have ever felt, and I was getting no break in between them. It was just one continuous contraction, one after another. So I might have like 3 to 5 seconds in between contractions, to where I was able to breathe for a second, and then they'd come right back. So the anesthesiologist luckily got there very, very quickly, and in order to get my epidural, I had to sign a paper, a waiver for him, and I'm telling you, that guy must have the hardest job in the world. You're going into a mama in a room giving birth in the most pain that she has ever been in her life, and asking her to sign paperwork and read a paper before you give her the drugs. So I feel bad for him. Luckily, I was very sweet to him. At least I hope I was. But I tried to be. So I signed the paper really quick. I said, I'm not even reading it. I don't care what it says. I'm signing it. So I quickly signed it. And he's like, all right, well, you guys, I need you to sit up and bend over and sit very, very still in order for me to get this medicine in you. So Nick had to go to the other side of the room because it is a very risky procedure, I guess, and just for safety, like for the safety of me and everything, that it has to be a very sterile environment for it. So Nick had to go to the other side of the room. Luckily, he didn't have to leave the room, but the nurse came over and was holding my shoulders, and I had to like slouch over, and the nurse was so sweet. She tied my hair back because I didn't have a hair tie or anything like that. So she tied my hair back and was just kind of like coaxing me through, telling me to breathe and just to try to stay as still as I possibly can. Let me tell you, that was the hardest thing I've ever done, besides giving birth, obviously. But having to sit still, completely still, during the most intense contractions you are ever having and the most intense pain that you've ever had in your whole life, and having to slouch over and sit still and not be able to move, it is so hard. But if you move, you risk something going wrong and him hitting your spinal cord or something. I mean, they're putting a needle in your back, so you have to be very, very still. So the anesthesiologist and my nurse were amazing. He got it in there very, very quickly, the first try. And let me tell you, about 5 to 10 minutes after that epidural went in there, I was in heaven. I was not feeling any pain. I was still feeling pressure because my contractions were really strong, but the pressure was nothing. Like, compared to the pain that I was just in, it was nothing. So my husband was making fun of me because I went from like freaking out in so much pain. I wasn't screaming or anything, but I was just going, oh my God, oh my God. I was like, I felt like I was gonna pass out and throw up because of the pain being so intense. And then I was laughing and smiling like 5 to 10 minutes later. So Nick was making fun of me with that, but I felt great. So the nurse is like, all right, well, it's probably gonna be a long time until you actually give birth, until you get to a 10, because normally once you hit a 7, you kind of slow down, they said. So she said, why don't you try to get some sleep? She's like, it's gonna be a really long day tomorrow. Why don't you try to get some rest? So I said, all right, I'm gonna try to get some rest. So they shut the lights off, and since I wasn't in pain, I felt like, okay, maybe I could actually sleep. But the problem was with that, they had a big blood pressure thing on my arm because they have to monitor your blood pressure while you're in labor. So it was squeezing my arm every 5 minutes because I was in active labor. So they had to make it do it every 5 minutes instead of every hour. So every 5 minutes, it's squeezing my arm. They had the heart rate monitor on the baby, and I just kept listening to the heart rate. So there were so many noises and so many things going on that there was no way I was getting any sleep. So I decided to just hang out, stare at the heart rate monitor, watch her heart rate. And my nurse said, all right, well, I'm gonna come back and just check on your contractions and your stuff like within an hour. So I knew I wasn't gonna be able to get much sleep anyway because they're coming back in an hour to check on me. So Nick decided he was gonna try to get some rest so he would be ready for the following day. Well, technically that same day, because now at this point it was about 4 a.m. I would say, after all this stuff happened, after we got the epidural and calmed everything down. So I was laying there in bed, he was sleeping, and my nurse came back in around 5 to check on me, and she checked me and said, oh my goodness, the head's right there. you're at a 10, you're ready to go. So I was like, oh my goodness, you said it was going to be a long time until I had to worry about pushing or anything. Meanwhile, I got no sleep. I've been up for almost 24 hours straight, and they're telling me that it is time to have my baby girl. And I mean, I was so excited. I could not wait to meet my sweet baby. I have waited so long for it. I was so excited. So I said, Nick, wake up, it's time. So he hurried up and jumped up out of bed. Meanwhile, they don't have the room prepared whatsoever. My entire birthing room was not ready for a baby yet. So they're rushing around, hurrying up, trying to get the room together and get ready and get the doctor in, because they said she was pretty much gonna fall out if they didn't hurry up. So they're hurrying up, rushing around, trying to get everything ready. Meanwhile, my nurse is trying to have me do some practice pushes, because I've never pushed before. I've never had a baby, so I didn't even know really how to push. I didn't take any birthing classes or anything like that. So she's trying to have me do some practice pushes. So I started doing my practice pushes, and she said I was doing amazing, and I could still feel when I was having contractions. So she said, let me know when you're having the next contraction, we'll keep doing it. So we must have done maybe 10 pushes, 10 rounds. So we would push 3 times each round. So we must have done 10 pushes altogether. And then the doctor came in and he checked me also, and he's like, oh my gosh, your head is right there. So I must have only pushed for about a half hour until she came out. So I was pushing and pushing, and then all of a sudden they said she's here, and it was amazing. It was the best feeling in the world. They put her right on my chest as soon as she was born, and I just started crying, and Nick started crying, and it was the best feeling in the entire universe. So after they put her on my chest, the little munchkin, who I loved so much already, decided to poop all over mommy. So she had her first bowel movement on mommy, all over me, which was really funny. But at first she wasn't crying when she came out, so I was getting really nervous, but they said her color was great, she was fine. She was so alert when she came out. She was just looking around the room. It was amazing. I've never seen a baby so alert moments after they were born. So it was incredible. And they were trying to clean me all up and clean her all up, and the doctor looked really worried. So I was holding my baby girl, and I got really lightheaded all of a sudden, and I remember telling the nurse, please take her, I don't want to drop her. Please just take her from me. I'm so scared I'm going to drop her. So the nurse hurried up and took her away. They went to go clean her all up, and the doctor said, I can't figure out why you're bleeding so much. So there was blood everywhere. It looked like a murder scene in there. And he was frantically trying to get my bleeding to stop. He didn't know why I was bleeding. I did tear as I was pushing her out, but it wasn't a huge tear, it was a minor tear. So he stitched me up, and he thought maybe that would stop the bleeding. It wasn't stopping the bleeding. So I was getting really sick. I started throwing up, getting so lightheaded, and I was so scared, and my husband was so scared, and because they couldn't figure out why I was bleeding so much. I was hemorrhaging, and they didn't know why. So finally, after about 15 minutes of me getting violently ill, really dizzy, and bleeding out, bleeding like crazy, they finally stopped the bleeding. And the doctor decided my entire pregnancy I had a low-lying placenta, which means the placenta was down close by the cervix, and they actually were monitoring me my whole pregnancy, because there was a possibility I was going to need a C-section because of it, because it's unsafe to deliver if your placenta is too low, because it could cut off oxygen to the baby and stuff. So they were monitoring me my whole pregnancy about that, and then about 2 weeks before I had her, I went in for my final ultrasound, and they gave me the okay to deliver vaginally. But they decided that it was because my placenta was a low-lying placenta still, it was still considered low-lying for where it was, that caused the excess bleeding and the hemorrhage that I had. So we were really scared. I mean, my husband wouldn't leave my side. I kept telling her to go over to the baby, be with the baby. I wanted him to be with her because she was our baby girl. I just wanted him to take care of her. But he was so sweet. He would not leave my side. He said, we're in this together. It's me and you. So, hi buddy. Gotta get down, okay? So he was staying right by my side. He was really scared. Sorry, his doggy wants in. Hi buddy. So he didn't want to leave my side. So he was, hey, go on, sit down. Sorry, as you can see, I have a little baby boy here who wants attention. So he was crying because he was so afraid that he was going to lose me because I was bleeding and they didn't know why. And like I said, it looked like a murder scene. There was blood everywhere. It was really scary. But once they got the bleeding under control, it was okay. They knew I was going to be okay. So that was obviously a relief to everybody. And then Nick went over to our beautiful baby girl and got to hold her and got to bring her over to me. I, at this point, was so cold. I was freezing because of all the blood I lost. I was so cold. I could not regulate my body temperature. So after the birth, they had brought me about 10 heated blankets that they had and put them all over me, trying to get me to warm up because for whatever reason, I could not get warm no matter how many blankets they gave me. So eventually they put me in this bubble. It was like this bubble with like a heater in it, and finally they got me warm after about an hour of not being able to get warm and regulate my temperature. Finally they got me warm and they gave me my sweet baby and I put her on my chest and I actually had her, I was holding her when I was in the bubble trying to get warm. They said, well, if you want to do skin to skin, the heat's good for the baby too. So of course I wanted to do that because my goal was to do skin to skin and breastfeed right away because I know that's best. But unfortunately, because of the hemorrhage, I wasn't able to do that. So I was really upset about that, but it was fine. They told me I could start breastfeeding right then because the baby was hungry. She was sucking on her fingers. So as soon as she was born, she started sucking on her fingers, which was so cute. It was really funny. But so I started breastfeeding her and it was going well. She had a good latch to start, which I was really impressed because I've never breastfed before and obviously she hasn't, so I was really impressed with the latch that she had. But that was our crazy birth story, and it's a day I will never ever forget. It was the most hectic, scary, exciting day of my entire life, and it was amazing. But like I said, it was really scary. But like her birth went so quickly. The doctors my nurse was so funny because she's like, there was no way I thought I was ever going to be helping you give birth. Because I went in there, I wasn't dilated hardly at all, I wasn't effaced fully, they were trying to get me induced. So my induction never really happened officially. They did do the Cervidil, which they said may have helped me go into labor, but they also said that probably if I didn't go to the hospital that night to be induced, I would have been going that night anyway because the baby was ready to come out. So it was a very, very crazy, hectic day, but like I said, it was the best day of my life. But if you guys liked this video, I'm sorry it was long, but it was a crazy story I had to tell you, and I wanted to capture it on camera. But if you like this video and want to subscribe to our channel, we do daily vlogs with our sweet baby girl, our crazy dog who you saw, who wanted to sit on my lap, and our family and our crazy lives. And we would really appreciate if you guys subscribe to us. We'd love for you to join our family, and we will see you in our next vlogs if you decide to watch. But if not, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it, guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye!
Five. She was 5.